Chronicles, pushing through as we continue to get into our journey of voices with everybody who is on the front lines, entrepreneurs, persons in community, in industry, professionals, youth. It's so critical that we all hold space and all find time to connect, explore, and really just unpack what is going on and what is the change and action that we feel we need to see and that we must be a part of. So stay tuned. All right, so why don't we get the quick kind of 1-2, maybe almost like, I don't know, rapid fire. So I'll say this, just because, like, shoot, because there's so much for you. I'll say, yo, who are you? What are you up to? In terms of, you wear many hats. So just give us a 1-2 of what's that looking like in this moment. What are some of the hats you're wearing?
In this moment. So my name is Wilfred Sam King II, or the second, originally from Freetown, Sierra Leone. I always add that because I think it's a large part of my identity. I'm Canadian. I'm currently an entrepreneur, and I would say probably how I would categorize myself is probably a PR marketing specialist is how I define what I do, and it kind of tiptoes and dips into everything else I do. I'm a proud employee at the University of Manitoba, where I work on outreach and engagement through our external relations team. So that's basically building connections for the university and making sure our alumni are supported and creating resources for as many stakeholders within the university as possible. What I'm most proud of right now is my foundation, the Rising Stars Foundation, and what we do. And I've been playing around with this word a little bit, is we aim to remove socioeconomic barriers we've been using the word underserved youth, but I'm thinking of changing it to a positive affirmation to deserving youth. And the reason why is because I would never accept I am underserved. You know what I mean? You don't ever really want to accept it's a negative connotation. To uprise or to rise like the rising stars, they are deserving. So I think I'm going to switch it over to that word. And basically we run different programming. Education is always at the core of it. Essentially we use sports to excite them, and then we reinforce them with academics. So you can check out our website, Rising Stars MB. And last but not least, prior to my injury, I was a high-performance athlete. I was a long jumper with Olympic aspirations. I tore my Achilles in January, early February, had surgery on it. So I still consider myself an athlete. I'm just not as mobile right now. And then last but not least, I'm starting to embrace my artistic side, and I've never been able to embrace it because the athletic side has been so dominant. So I would say I'm now a triple threat because I can sing, dance, and act. Triple threat. That's how I'll close it out.
You know, you told us, like, okay, what are some of the hats you're wearing, and where's your headspace and the values and the vision? Like, where are you at? You know, you said Manitoba. So what is the lay of the land right now? I mean, it's
in Winnipeg.
April, you know, obviously we're you know, in the midst of this COVID phase. Like, what is kind of the vibe like with you right now? You know, in terms of what are the rules? What is some of the impacts or challenges?
Yeah. Well, you know, we're a small big town, right? Or a small big city, whichever way you want to mash it up. Winnipeg's a great place, really community centric. We fundraise the most in Canada always. And it's because of how intertwined people are. I wouldn't say everyone knows everyone, but if you are doing something, if you're doing something positive or negative, it'll probably be noticed. And the lay of the land right now is bizarre because people are now realizing that they were complaining about the wrong thing. They say, oh, there's nothing to do in Winnipeg. That's why they want to leave. Now that's why they want to leave, right? But now when there's literally nothing to do in Winnipeg is when you start missing everything. The abundance, the culture, the activities, the festivals, the interactions, and just all these little things that Winnipeg has to offer. I think is really taking people. They're like, wow, like this hurts a lot. And the lay of the land right now is a lot of uncertainty. We're fortunate, once again, we're in Canada. We're fortunate, once again, we're not dependent on natural resources. And we're fortunate in the sense that we've always supported local businesses. I think it's a very Winnipeg thing to do. So there's been tons of campaigns for the food drive, tons of campaigns for local restaurants and businesses. So I feel very positively about Winnipeg. I always do. I honestly think it's one of the best cities in Canada by far.
Oh, by far. That's a bold statement. All right.
I'm an ambassador, you know what I mean? So like I'm biased. I have everything I love here, right? So but I do know from working with our foundation, with our inner cities and some other deserving areas that aren't being shown the same amount of attention or have the same amount of wealth. I know there's some very difficult times going on there, but overall, I think people are quite positive. I think we're trying, we're working hard, and that's all that we can do. Everyone understands. Even my little nephew, he's 4, he understands what's going on. So I think that dialogue and making sure people are communicating within the community is huge.
100%, right? And everything you're touching on is so critical. So I think the last thing really I would say is like, we're talking about, and always like even back in the day being in track, nationals, competing and everything, like you have to have a mindset and an attitude. And it's like that's something that I respected even back then. You're an authentic dude, genuine dude, but also just like raw. And it's like the unique position of being a track athlete that I'm forever, grateful that was such a privilege, is like it's an individual sport within a team sport. And so you have to be able to be present in the moment, also kind of see that stuff that's not too far off in the distance, but be in a space where you can leverage that, because the stuff that's 5 years or a year or 15 months or whatever in the horizon, like you're trying to scale and leverage. So like with that same mindset that that I know you've cultivated and continue to build, and it has helped you in the entrepreneurship and in the branding side and in the work and school stuff, like how do you apply that mindset into this space? Like obviously you talked about pivoting and things already, but how do you apply that into this space where it's like constant survival mode, but also there have to be change, and then also like there's that unknown. So what does applying that look like?
Well, I'm a firm believer in you have to be your best self in order to help anyone else, and being your best self enables you to help more people. So if you take that in the track context, if you are the fastest person, or you can jump the furthest or jump the highest, what ends up happening with anyone that's training with you, and you know this for a fact, they have two choices. They can feel defeated and quit, or they can try to get faster. But I would say 99.9% of the time, if they put in the same dedication as you, even though you're more talented, they will now close that gap. They may never surpass you, but they close the gap. And I think, and I've spoken to you about this multiple times, I think that's what really being a leader is. And maybe, and I probably did get that from track, but in order to be the best leader, you need to empower other people to be in positions and to be in the position to lead. And with track, it's all about increments, and it's all about you're training 2 to 3 hours a day, 5 times a week. for 2/10, a tenth, sometimes not even a tenth, 100th of a second, centimeters, all these small increments. So when it goes for reward versus input, you don't see your reward for maybe years. And that's important because you stop this on demand. Life is not Netflix. It's not going to ask you if you're still watching, like it's it's just going to keep going, whether you get left behind or whether you fall asleep. And I think that's what gave us this foundation to be successful. Obviously, upbringing, faith, family, all these other dynamics, allowing us to only concentrate on us for a period of time, or on our scope for a period of time. That's what I think is what I'm bringing into my everyday life. And you basically start here, and you can't see my arms, but you start here, and eventually you have to bring it all together and streamline it, because what you realize is you, especially in this day and age, you become a brand, and your brand and what you do are one and the same. And how that's reflected to an outsider's perspective or the community is extremely important. Like, I could never stop being an athlete completely. It's part of me now, but I'm not only an athlete. And that's where people find the disconnect sometimes. It's like, oh, I'm an athlete. Like, why would I do that? Why would I try to start my own business? Other people do that. Oh, I'm not smart enough for this. Like, I never thought I was smart enough to code growing up, but now I can code. I never thought I'd be good at economics, but I read some books and I went to school for it. So it's I never thought I'd pass calculus either. That thank you God. But you apply yourself, and you start to find ways to develop these skills that allow you to push forward. And same thing like track. It's all about increments, and you don't let the big picture ever defeat your journey towards it. So that's that.
Big facts. Knocking it all the way out the box. But no, I mean, the whole thing is obviously like, yo, it's critical to link up and get more of these combos. I think from a business perspective, from a community perspective, young professional, all the stuff, that everything we talk about. And then I think it's like, especially at a time now, it's even more critical. Because there's so much movement, so much information as well as misinformation. It's like, I think the disconnect is growing. Which is like, if you're a young professional, or you're an entrepreneur, or you're a student, athlete, whatever it is, like whatever hat people wear, it's like now you're being tested in all of them.
Yep.
And if you don't know who to talk to, or everything coming out, right? So it's like, if you don't have somebody to talk to, or you're not in a position to be like, yo, let me pick up the phone and talk to my mentor real quick. Like, how are you going to be able to strap down? Or people are like, oh, well, improve yourself or better yourself or double down. If you don't know what that means tangibly, like, how are you?
You don't even know where to start. I mean, 2020 has not been the friendliest for, I think, most people. And what I've been getting a lot, and it's kind of crazy to think about it, because this year was supposed to be that year. And I think a lot of people really, new decade, put this huge emphasis that this is where we find all the answers. That's I don't know about you, but that's how I felt people were coming into this year. And leaving this year, I was like, you know what? I need like a hard reset, because like I've been going ham, like working my day job at the university, my foundation, Rising Stars Foundation, athletically, my relationships, because 2 years ago I said, you know what, I'm gonna try regular conversations. And the reason why I started with talking about how I wanted to do a hard reset was because I think when everyone has now found this new motivation, or the masses find a new thing to kind of clamp onto or grab onto, it's almost like the process is on demand. And because we live in a society that's on demand, they don't realize how hard my boy here is working with Infidus. I'm working, and all those other entrepreneurs and everyone else, they don't realize, oh wow, they didn't just wake up and say, okay, well, because tomorrow is a new year, we're gonna get it, we're gonna get it popping. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's funny and it's played out, but like new year, new me. Like, no. It should be new year, better me. You know, it's a process, and sometimes the best way to really start a process is to stop, relax, say, okay, what do I want? What's important to me? And back to what I was saying about being present. About 2 years ago, one of my closest friends was like, why do you just come and go? And I realized whenever I start a new project or a new initiative, or even join a new group slash friends or colleagues, or you know this very well, as soon as you move into a new sector or you're trying to learn something new, often what happens is you're trying to pull as much information, you're trying to learn as much, and you're probably spending a lot of time with those people or that thing. So sometimes you neglect your friends, and I realized I was doing that, and I would see them periodically, but I wasn't present. And what I realized was I need to start utilizing this tool they call the phone more effectively. So every now and then, anytime I think of any one of my close friends, I pick up the phone, call, try to have at least a 10, 15-minute conversation, because it makes whatever is popping off, you know. But when she calls, I pick up the phone. We have a good conversation. When I see her, good conversation. So, and people start to understand, like they say, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result, right? So if someone is just engaging you in a manner that you don't like, and or you're engaging in a manner that you don't like, and you're not changing anything, well, of course nothing's gonna get better, nothing's gonna evolve, you know. So it's so simple, but sometimes, like, moving this clutter out of the way so you can see it all, it can be very difficult, because if you're in it, sometimes you can't see it, you know.
Which is like, you know, that's part of the constant challenge is like, and you know, I just saying that, my mind just goes right away to like, you know, it's the quality, not the quantity. Like, I don't need to be around 50 people if 5 make me feel blessed, you know, if we're all doing stuff where I got trust and faith. Or like, easiest one, like the social media. A lot of people like, and with the, you know, the COVID situation, and we can, you know, touch on some of those things, but it's like, as you said, the instant gratification compounded with the social media of everybody needing to put on their best self is like, are you really like, you know, the level of connection, whether it's authentic or you know, new or an existing relationship, is like, you know, that's something that's been kind of weighing on me, not necessarily, like, not in a bad way, but just like really thinking on that, is like, this whole situation is definitely, you know, for a lot of reasons, but it's a transition. We're at a period of, you know, a shift, and it's kind of that transition phase of, okay, now everybody's having to be more mindful and having to be more intentional, you know, awareness to like, what is it that you actually value? Like, what are some of the priorities you have, and like, what have you been doing too much of that now you're like, I'm not doing it, I'm scaling back, you
Yep.
know? So it's just so interesting to also be in a space where, okay, there were some things that, like you said, not just in the routines, those habits, those unconscious kind of automatic things that, okay, well, hold on, I was getting up every day and just going to this, I don't need to now,
Yeah.
you know, or I'm not around everybody, so like, yo, now I can really decide like what makes sense. And even still, some of the challenges not getting back to everybody or reaching out to everybody, but it brings all this to the forefront. Like, people are really now needing to be intentional with who,
Hmm.
how, and when we connect and come together. And I feel like that's going to be one of the staples almost, like, that comes through this whole situation. Like, obviously, you know, I think, you know, bonds will be, you know, made. I think in the big picture, you know, people are pockets. They're gonna get, you know, thicker. Other people, you know, the other side is, you know, smaller. It's a slippery slope. But I think, you know, one of the
Yeah.
things that will define this is like how people come together, who they are, you know, when they come together, and like, when is that?
Hmm.
Even working from home, you know, like, we're never gonna go back to what it was like 5 months ago. Never.
Mm-mm.
You know,
And you know, some people are terrified of change, and I don't think the world has ever experienced such an instantaneous change. You know, everything else has been gradual. You and I understand pivot, pivot, pivot. If you can't pivot anymore, on to the next. Like, and I think that's a really, really tough thing for people to understand right now. And I love what you said, man. Like, you're so right about the connections and like the authenticity of people being themselves, because you now have very little distractions. You can only go on TikTok for so long. You can only go on Instagram for so long. You can only go on Facebook. You can only watch Netflix for so long. So now you have to get into here. This thing. This thing and this thing. And these two, if they're not in sync, man, that's a scary, scary place to be. That's a scary place to be. When your mind is telling you something, or you have doubts, and then your emotions are now wrapped up into it. But here's the thing. Just take a deep breath. Fortunately, if you're in Canada, oh my goodness, you hit the jackpot. Because back to what you were saying, and it triggered a thought in my mind as soon as you said the word, and it was perspective, new perspectives, saying we will never go back to the way it was 5 months ago. And that's a really important point, because I'm sure you've seen the post online where it's like refugees fleeing their countries or war-torn countries, and they're just trying to get their, like, the Maslow's hierarchy: shelter, um, uh, food, and safety. Right? Those, like, your three main survival. And you saw what happened with the toilet paper here. You saw that instant spike of hysteria, and then it normalized. And the only reason it normalized was because we live here. But what's interesting is you go see what's happening in developing countries. They've been through this rodeo before. They are, I would say, in some capacities, better equipped to handle losses, because people die of hunger, people die of starvation, malnourishment, uh, uh, poor drinking water, malaria, all these things that we take for granted because we live here, you know, like immunization and general health. So for them, and I've spoken to some people back home in Sierra Leone, and they're like, yeah, it's just interesting because they still don't think it's that serious. Some of them, anyways. And when you look at the grand scheme of things, you're like, yeah, like, if you can't find food to eat, the coronavirus is the least of your worry. It's the least of your worry. So what I like to encourage people that are like down right now is like, don't compare your disposition or your position with someone else's position, or two dispositions with one another. Just understand that you do have privilege. Just understand that you have a community and a system or a government, whichever architect you want to look at, that is actually here for your best interest. Unlike in developing countries where you sometimes you're not certain if you know that too. So we don't dwell.
No, but I mean, you're raising the critical points, right? And it's like, especially, just even looking at the COVID um, situation, like it's been handled so different. Like I would say the Eurocentric, like like North America and Europe.
Yeah, the Western world,
The
yeah.
Western world, like really handled it very similarly, and speaking very directly to the privilege that you mentioned, like other nations that their day one was our day one handled it very differently. I mean, talking to some people in Middle East and the Caribbean,
Yeah.
I mean, even in other parts of like UK, still there were some delays in certain areas, but like how it's being implemented, like Middle East, boom, we're having lockdowns, like
Yeah.
mandatory, or grocery stores will deliver to your doorstep. Don't go anywhere. You're not doing anything. We're taking care of this. It's so different to how it's played out, and as you mentioned, like the hysteria. I mean, and so it's like right now, what a lot of people, and I think it's important that just as many conversations and as many moments of pause as people can have and take, is critical at this point, because it's like this is sure the period, the phase of the coronavirus, it's been hit us for a month. There were other things that were going on before this, and there are going to be those same things that are happening during the same time: mental health, physical health, passing, sickness, celebrations, whatever. Like life has to continue to go on, and it's like over here, because we've been so removed from so many of these things like death or pain, at a more general level, we are disconnected. And so it's like, when these things happen, and we already know about the strains on health and care or education or whatever, but then we really just don't know how to deal with it because we're not in the thick of it like everybody else is for the most part. So it's like we have the grit and the resiliency, but when push comes to shove outside of our normal arena, like how much are most people really able to pivot? Like that becomes the question. So it's like people are going stir crazy. What if you're in an area that's been war torn? Like stir crazy, at least you have a house.
I know. What? The government's giving you $2,000 to stay at home? Come on. And this is my privilege, right? And our privilege now that we can speak to these things, because it's interesting, because if you're trying to have a debate, sometimes people aren't even on the same topic, because the conversation that we're having about privilege is based on the understanding that we know what's going on around the world, whereas some people may just localize it. They may just even keep it within their community or city or within their country, and that's a completely different conversation.
It's always a fine line of like, not even whether it's information or mental health, or especially with this COVID stuff, like everybody wants to see what's going on and wants to feel good, but like it's still the point of like, you have to put, like, your life, like you have to put some kind of work in to feel better. Like you have to deal with like, hit the pause button, you know what I mean? If you got a lot of shit, if you're on the mental health spectrum where you have so much anxiety and things that are pent up and you're feeling depressed, you got to do something about that. Like you owe it to yourself or your kids or your family or whatever. Like call somebody
or ask for help, and that is proactive.
Right? Or just do whatever it is that you can. Like even if you don't feel comfortable, like asking for help. Like there's so many different ways to switch up the routine, but it's like we're in a very slippery slope of time where it's like everybody's experiencing mass isolation right now. So you're going to go into your headspace. And if you don't have some tangible routines or steps, like for me, that's been big. And even slipping some days, but like doing the affirmations, doing the gratitudes every day. I'm gonna make sure that I, 3 to 5. What am I grateful for? The affirmations, like who am I? What do I really want to big up myself for, or empower myself to do for the day or whatever. Like there are certain small things that, like, if I do core, I didn't work out today because I went to sleep
at 8:30,
late, whatever. Yeah,
8:30, 10:30, 10:30 maritime.
Like so it's like, but I know that when I do work out, I feel better. You know what I mean? I go outside, I feel better. So it's like, that, like, it's the small things that we have to start winning during this time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or else we just kind of wither away. Like this is a 15-month game. Like, it's, you know what I mean? We're not getting the vaccine anytime soon. So we're going to be trying to beat the curve till fall. Then it opens up. And then when it opens up in the fall, you get another wave. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, and that's when I was like, whoa. They announced an outbreak of corona, or the COVID. So for 6 weeks, this thing, and I know you kept up on it because I think we had a little bit of a conversation. And I remember I was just hearing whispers from like healthcare professionals. They're like, this is going to be crazy. This is going to be bad. We can't have this go. And everyone's like, it's just the flu.
Facts.
And I myself too, I was like, oh yeah, whatever. Like, because like you said at the beginning of the segment, is like social media and misinformation. And everyone's just like, yeah. That's a China problem. Oh, that's an Asia problem. Oh, that's an Italy problem. Uh-oh. It's a global problem. And at that point, it was too late. Everyone's just like, whoa. And the worst thing about the vaccine, he said, like, I don't want this to be all doom and gloom. He said, the unfortunate thing is, it's like a harvest. When you plant a seed, no matter how many people you have planting these seeds, no matter how many farms you have, the rate of growth is still the same in order to harvest. And he used that analogy because he's like, everyone's working as hard as they can around the world to find these vaccines. But the truth of the matter is, before it can even get to human testing, they have to isolate it. So they isolated it. After they isolate it, or the virus strand or whatever, after they isolate it, they now have to start doing cellular tests or something like that with
It's
microorganisms.
like, there's like, exactly. And it's like there's so many different processes just to get something to a stage where you can test on 100
humans.
People. You go, all right, bet 50 of these people didn't work. Let's try another round. And then, like, you know what I mean? So it's just like, it's such a,
and then you go back to the start.
So it's like a matter of, and this is what I mean, like, so, even in these calls and our conversations, that's why it's enriching and it's critical, because, like, for me, everybody's in survival mode about this. And yes, like, we need to be, but, like, we cannot get caught in and I know we talked about this early on, like, when it was first coming through, like, for me, what blew my mind was, and this is no shade at all, so hopefully we're not gonna get in too much more trouble. You know how it is. But, like, they made this announcement, and all of a sudden there's flights coming home from China. and like, which is great because we need to recall people, but they didn't set up when we didn't have screening. We didn't have no glass, gloves, mask, containment, quarantine, no
self-isolation was an option. It was prescribed.
Right?
It was prescribed.
So it's just like, that was like a month and a half ago. Like, when it was still low key, like, we were looking at Italy, like, wondering what's up. We had already intaken like hundreds of people, like, directly from, and so it's just like, in that element of the conversation, as you're saying, it's like, this is really now a time where, like, leaders in any and all positions have to come up, because, like, the fact is, whatever the situation is, we as a community, we as a country, like, we're never going to get the worst. We're going to get as close to the best case situation and scenario as can happen in terms of what our feedback is. So if we're not getting that and we're only focused on a short term, all right, we just got to make it through these 3 months. And once 3 months, we can go back to work, go back to do these things. Like, I can take care of, like, shoot, my nails can be beat, or my eyebrows and my hair, worry about it. But it's not a matter of that. If billion-dollar industries, companies, countries are seeing and gonna touch bankruptcy, not just all the startups, not just all the young professionals and entrepreneurs or whatever, like seasoned people as well, seasoned things that have deep pockets as well, like in every industry. What does that mean? Like, government's already committed to putting out money, but what does that mean when you look at the states, or you look at, like, in the bigger conversation, when spending is down, where's their tax money coming from? Like, we don't have limitless reserves. So then what is that? You know what I mean? From a wider scale situation, like, if we have these blinders on and we're hopeful, and you have to stay positive, but it's like, that's why routine is so critical. Like, that's why paying attention to yourself and honoring yourself, and paying attention to your family, and, like, the actual things that matter if you died are critical, because we're in this for the long haul. And if you can't find a way to be grounded, then you actually lose, because you're making short-term bets and decisions that people that are focusing on the 15-month, 18-month turnaround, are going to do great. People aren't buying stocks until it bottoms out even more, right? That'll happen. So it's just like, it's such a kind of a slippery slope, where everything you're saying, is, tipped off, to where we're really at an interesting point.
Yeah. And it just goes to show what level of globalization we are now at, because everything is just so intertwined. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. And you and I know how to work hard through sports, through work, through life. So we've built a threshold. I'm just worried, but I don't want to sound insensitive, but I'm worried that there's a large population that has not gone through enough to cope with what this really is, and that's why society's gonna have to shift. I don't know where it's gonna shift. I don't know what's gonna happen when we come out of this, but everyone's like, oh, I can't wait till summer, it's gonna be sick, But the truth of the matter is, we both know it's not gonna be an on-off switch. Maybe they say you can go out now you can hang out with 10 people. Okay, 50. Okay, maybe after a few more months, capacity's 200, movie theater starts to open up. But if another outbreak happens, best know they shut that whole thing, and then we're, like you said, we're back to the and you have to be mindful of that, because I think people are thinking, well, when's it going to be over? Like, when's it, it's, even when it's done, it's not going to be done. We still have a journey that we will have to support each other in as a community. And you have to remember that, and you have to understand that it is going to be difficult, but you can do it. And that's what you need to realize. You can do it. You are well equipped. You are an amazing person. Those positive affirmations, this isn't the corny stuff you hear when you're a child. If you've made it this far, you need to understand that you can survive in this world, and you have the strength and the ability to do it. And if you need help, you got my boy Dre here, and you got me.
It's fact. Right now we're in stormy seas.
Yep.
So everybody getting excited to maybe see some land soon is not helping you. It's not helping the deck. You know what I mean? Like, you better learn how to be on this ship, because we're going, and it's like, that thing is critical, because I mean, shoot, what ideally, what like we get out of this inform, like, you know what I mean? I don't even, like, what is the ideal? Like, nothing is going back to whatever the normal is, and a lot of people are going to be out of work. Like, everybody's paying out money.
Yeah.
So, like, you know what I mean? It's like, what is that next step? Like, just even having conversations that, for athletes.
Yeah.
Spring season's canceled. So what if
That's scary.
what if summer's gone too, and what if fall gets canceled too? The people who were going from missing potentially part of their senior year, then also don't get to, you know what I mean? You're missing scholarship now. You're missing bursary now. So now you're a year and a half, 2 years out before you even get to touch ball,
Yeah. Yeah.
or whatever the sport is. Like,
And
how are you
yeah.
gonna train? How are you
Hmm.
gonna connect with people to watch film, to get insight? Like, none of that's gonna come to people. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's the other part of the raw. Like, yo, we went through this, having surgeries. That gives you a different perspective. Not being able to walk,
Hmm.
living away from home, or suffering through loss of family
Hmm.
member, or those are lived experiences that become what define you. Like,
Yeah.
and that's what you can bring to any table. But if we don't double down on what value we bring,
Hmm.
no one's gonna bring you to the table, and you can't stay for
Hmm.
long.
If if I was a professional athlete right now, especially for track, like, wow, like, you, when all your revenue is based on you going to Europe to run or jump or whatever, like, can you really file for EI? What does that look like? What if that's your only skill?
Yeah.
You didn't make it to the NBA, you didn't make it to the MLB, and you didn't make it to MLS or Major League. Those are the only 3 contracts that are guaranteed. And maybe you were in your rookie year and you balled out, but you're like, I got this. I'm getting another 10 milli next year because I played so well, but I spent all my money because I gave my mom and pa 2 million. I gave my cousins 3. I gave auntie and uncle and the church and the community another 2. Like, all these valiant things because you said, oh, I got it back. And these are real issues that I don't think we're hearing about it. And I think, as you're talking about, when we start to evolve and move to the other side of this pandemic, there's going to be all these stories that you don't even think about. God forbid anything happened to anyone we loved, because my friend, actually, his uncle passed away from COVID in the UK, in London. My condolences to my boy Hoodie.
Big time.
And he's like, we can't do anything. You can't arrange. You can't have a service, a ceremony. Like, those are things that we as young people probably we don't even think about. But what does that look like? And these are situations you're just like, whoa. You will never be able to see that person or pay your respects or anything like that. And it's and if that was your sibling, that's, once again, you almost take these privileges that we have. Like during the Ebola crisis, I know back in Sierra Leone, there was tons of people that couldn't, like, as soon as they tested positive, you can't go around that body, you can't go anywhere. And that was it. But my mind never went there because there was no face, there was no personal connection, there was no emotional ties, apart from one of the worst cases was occurring in my country. So it's layers, and they're just going to continue to just present themselves. And that's why I said, and that's why I will reiterate again, we have to shift as a community, because we cannot function the same way, and we won't be able to function the same way. We just hope and pray that once we're on this other side, that everyone is maybe a little bit more conscientious of what it takes to actually build a society, you know. Because I thought when Steve Jobs passed away with all his billions, it would kind of resonate with a few. Doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like you said, we're all gonna pass on. This material world is here for now, but we're not is here forever, or somewhat, but we're not, you know. Yeah. But yeah, we got a little heavy there.
Hey, I'm telling you. Like, just as facts, you know what I mean? Like, and so like that's part of the tough part, but it's like in the same way, like, you know, and I think like that's why having these conversations is always a blessing, because it's like the heavy talks also highlight the opportunity. Like the heavy highlights the hope.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you can't really have one without the other. Like I can't appreciate my brother as much as when I'm not with him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or being able to watch growth from afar, or you know. So it's like when this stuff hits home, like passings. I mean, hearing about it in other countries, like in Asia. You know what I mean? Even in the States, bro. Like urns. That's it. You getting freezer trucks and urns, and nobody's seeing nothing, hearing nothing, and you know, it's getting mobilized. So it's like, what does that mean for the Black community? What does that mean for the Indigenous community? What does that mean for a lot of these communities where, like, not only are you in confinement now, but so many people are at risk, family members. I mean, like, you know, just to pause on the Black part for a minute, like racism is also a disease. So everybody that's Black is at risk based on having that underlying, you know,
Prejudice.
you know, prejudice, those experiences, those that leaves a mark on everyone. So it's like, you know, the tangible is like, yo, not everybody, like, yo, you don't have to be caking up. You don't have to be sitting on 40K or 200K or whatever right now to be winning. You have to be in a space where your head, and your mind, like you said, your heart, like where you can take some action and decide that you can rein in how you move. Because like the you know, like we talk about all the time, the challenge of being an entrepreneur. You know, the people that I'm talking with, half of them are fully doubled down in the situation because they don't want to go. They need to be relevant right now. They like their employees and the sales are critical, or else a big problem. And then the other half are, you know what I mean? People are on pause, or you know, so it's still like they're constantly learning. But it's like, if I was just like, all right, cool, like, bet, let me sit back. I mean, just cool it. And I'm watching shows and I'm trying to, you know, try to play this balance, because that was one of the hardest things was like the pressure of like, I need to go 24/7. But it's like just that headspace of like understanding, okay, cool. Let me chip away like bit by bit, like every day. Let me just, you know, what are some of the things I want to work towards personally? What are some of the things I could do to integrate? You know, I need to get back into stretching my body a little bit. Okay, cool. Let me get back to the 5x5 yoga I was doing a year ago. Let me make sure I do that. That's quick 5 minutes. Easy. All right. Feel better. You know, or let me send some more text to like you said, to my bros, to my family, to my sisters, like whoever it is, just to be like, yo, I appreciate you. I hope you and the family are blessed. Like, you know, what's good. Link up. And it's like, I feel like those are the things we gotta like demystify. It's like there's no like big move. Like there's also no small thing. Like everything adds up. Like back to the value. Like a 10-minute conversation with you for me is more enriching than a 35-minute conversation in some of these spaces I gotta go in. So it's like, how do we gotta start regulating that to be like me giving myself 5 minutes in the morning. I know I'm gonna feel better for the rest of the day if I do that. But you know, I don't have to think, oh, I got to save $50 today, or I got to invest in something else. You know what I mean? Like, we got to get to that tangible spot.
Yeah, like you're absolutely right, and even even back to these layers, I'll just say one more point. Like for our foundation, people were like, "Oh, stay home, stay home, stay home, stay home," and that's right. Everyone should, but once again, it's a little bit privileged because not everyone's home is safe. Stay home, stay safe. And I've been hearing that. And with some of the kids and the families that we deal with, it's been a little bit difficult to kind of not see and hear, because you're like, okay, so what if they're in an abusive home? What if there's substance abuse? And now, on top of that substance abuse, they don't have to work, but they get money. And it goes, and it's not, it's, and the way the stimulus, the Canadian one works is it's not set. I think it's to people's discretion. Like, it's not like, oh, you got to put your tenant's name for your rent, that you got to put your cellular or your telecommunications code bill, and it gets sent to that. It's just going into your account. And for people that already have poor financial literacy,
Yep.
that is scary, scary, scary places. Like, it's sad because it's already happening, but what do we do? And it was nice that I saw in the news the other day. I think it's for some women in abusive homes. They're creating like COVID safe houses, because prior to, they could go to work and then maybe not ever have to interact with these abusive situations, or they go to school. Or for our kids in the Rising Stars Foundation, they would go to school. After school, they do their homework club. After homework club, they might even have a sports game. So by the time they get home, it's time to maybe eat and go to bed. You're limiting that chance of those negative interactions. But now you're telling people to stay home 24/7 in some homes that are far more unsafe than COVID. Far more unsafe than COVID, So it's things that I know people aren't thinking about because everyone has their own issues, But
it's like, at the same point, like, I think that's part of the duty of care that we do have. Like, and I think, like, that's, as we always talk, like, there's always longer term things for us to do, and then like shorter terms. But I think it's what you said earlier. People are trapped in their localized experience. So
yeah,
I can't actually understand the magnitude of this situation because I don't know what it's like in Sierra Leone. I don't know what it's like in Ethiopia. I don't know what it's like in Addis, or, in Cairo, Luxembourg, or in Germany, and like, I don't know. So it seems pretty bad right now, and the government has this, and tomorrow will be better. But it's exactly that. Like, there is a duty of care. You know what I mean? So it's like, there's some things I want to roll out where it's like, you don't even have to be able to make big money. Like, if you literally don't spend $50 a week, that adds up quick. You do that for 5 years, you literally have a portion of your down payment, like a house. So it's like trying to translate those things into real things. Like, investment is not like, it's not how much you make ever. It's never that. It's how much you spend and where you spend it. And like, that's the difference between persons who are rich or successful and persons who are not. Like, one of the big ones. So it's like, as you're talking about this, homes are not safe for a vast majority of people, and not even just from the abusive thing, but it's like, if your environment, if you want to get better, and your home situation is not that ideal state, you're in a place of discomfort. Like, you're in a place of, whether it's toxicity, but you're in the middle of challenge. So you need to constantly tap into what is that vision state, so that way you can really, like, not only seeing is believing, but like, yo, I know I'm gonna get a little bit closer, because it's almost like an optical illusion, bro. Like, the end seems such such a rosy place that we want to be, but like, when we really actually end up getting there, the mirage is up. It's a completely different place. The skills that
Yep.
I thought I had, the relaxing place that I thought, the job I thought I was going back to, gone. And the government doesn't want to hear from it because they're having to deal with all the other stuff that's going on. Or my community this, or, and it's like, this is a journey. You know what I mean? Like this moment just kind of highlights like the journey of life, extreme adversity. You know, like some people are joking around with now people get to experience what it's like to be black in North America. You know, and it's like, yo, facts, but also we're still
Blacks
experience being black. So where does that put us? And so it's like, you know, obviously we could talk about all kinds of stuff like that, but it's like I think that's one thing that I would definitely love to hammer out more. Like, what are some of the almost class-like things we can start to host and collaborate on to co-host to get some of these things?
Yeah. I think with us, we're gonna start our podcast slash weekly community, or bi-weekly, sorry. And we're gonna unpack what it means to be a community member, what it means for us to stand together, and we want different perspectives. The same way you're talking to your partner in Scotland is the same way we want to hear from frontline workers. That's business owners, like at a grocery store, or clerks or whatever. I have a friend in mind. He owns a grocery store, but he also owns a busing company. It's called Easy Transit, with one of my other friend. And they've been stepping up big time for the community, because I'm not sure if it's the same where you are, but Walmart, Superstore, and all these other places, they're so backed up for these deliveries, right? Because the infrastructure wasn't there. I remember people would laugh when Amazon first said, yeah, we'll deliver your groceries. What? No one's ever going to do that. And now
that's the expectation.
Yeah. And that's another thing. Society's going to change. Are we going to need these massive brick and mortars anymore after we come out of this? And what are we going to use those spaces for? I'm talking green spaces. That's what we should. But hey, we'll see. We'll see when we can evoke those massive shifts and changes in a few years. But doctors, police, like we had a major meth crisis here, or we still do. And I haven't heard anything about that pandemic because COVID has taken over so much of the news story that we still forget that these issues are probably still prevalent. So that's what our educational piece is. And we're also going to have a few of the kids in our program. We just talk to them, talk about their experience, and see what we could do. So from our perspective, it would be amazing to see what other NGOs like yourself or other organizations are doing, or what they're thinking of doing, because everyone is in a very reactionary place right now, and we have no other choice because we're constantly waiting to see what happens. No one can predict, but in terms of more tangible things, we're trying to figure out how we can do extra tutoring online. Is a big thing, but not everyone has internet at home. Not everyone has access to a computer. So we're gonna see how we make this happen, but that's a big thing. It might just be as simple as asking a bunch of people online for old smartphones so we can give to our kids, you know? So maybe if they do have internet at home, then they could use that, and then we can have these types of conversations. Hey, how was your schoolwork today? Did you have any difficulties? Because it is absolutely horrendous, but I understand the situation that we're in. And maybe kids are different, and we know kids are different, sorry. But could you imagine if you were in an elementary school and you were asked to learn all your coursework online?
Bro, do you
without
think
a teacher?
Ask me at any point Like, no,
I
bro,
know,
it's an
like
extended
we
vacation.
weren't just busting ourselves in university trying to, you know, like you're like, oh my goodness, there's only a month and a half left in this course. Oh man, I didn't do any readings. Ah, snap. That's an alleged story. We don't know if that's what I heard from a friend of a friend.
I don't know what that experience was like. I did class every day, but like, no, that's a fact, right? It's like, well, like literally, like this is going to disrupt at a cellular level, like everything, like bottom up, like nobody's safe. Like you got $1 billion, you got $10 in your pocket, you got nothing. Like the implications of how you interact with other people, like now we're different.
Yep.
It's gonna be different once you get out of like 4 months from like. So it's I think it's one of the things I do get excited about though is that it's like it's gonna continue to bring a lot of things to light.
Oh yeah.
You know, most of the stuff that's happening right now, it's not new. We're just having to stress on certain systems that we already, you know, or certain things that we already knew about. So it's like that the exciting opportunity, like you said, is like we have the privilege, and we have like we're also in the privilege of like being alive in a time like this, where we can assess the situation and be like, oh, dude, like this is crazy what's going on. Like we need to change. We need to take more action in our community. Or like I don't like where I'm at right now. Like I need to get my mom in the house. And like 50 years ago, I don't know what that was like. You know, like it's different, right? So now we have the challenges, but we also have the ability.
Yeah, and it's exciting. And that's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, you would think this is a doom and gloom, but there are slivers of excitement, because you're like, imagine if you're the person that figures out how to fix something that impacts the entire world. And I'm not talking just about the vaccine, because there's so many little things that we can't even fathom that people are working on right now. And once this thing is done, that'll be whole new businesses and systems. Like when you look at the cup warmers, you know what I mean? Like someone must have been like, oh my goodness, this cup's too hot. What do I do? Oh, well, let's put a sleeve on it, you know? But simple things like that, those are billion-dollar industries. And I'm sure right now people are just brewing. People are like, whoa, yeah. Like I've been trying to get myself to code for a few years now, but I finally started a course on it, and I would have never had that time to do it, you know? Dropped my EP, which my boy features on, you know, once again, would have never had the time to really put that together. Like I thought I could always write, so that was fine. But producing, recording, and mastering an entire EP, it was exhausting, but I loved it because my mind was working in ways that I had never experienced before. And when you do things like that, you're not only changing fundamentally how you think, you're also allowing yourself to grow and fail rapidly, but at the same time, the risk is mediated. You know what I mean? And that was what was exciting about putting together that album and trying to learn how to code, is we now have time to actually make a lot of mistakes. And maybe that's what we take away from this whole period, is like fail fast and try again, you know? Like yeah.
We'll get some more next steps, but you already know what it is. Always a blessing. Appreciate you taking some time. Looking forward to the next convo.
Okay, bro. Much love.
Signing off. Number 1, COVID Chronicles, pushing through as we continue to get into our journey of voices. So stay tuned, because there's more.